What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Real Husbands of CofC. I'm Cardell, and with me, of course, is my brothers and co-hosts, Fred Quick, James, DJ Scribb Vickers, and Josh Hall. Today is a special day for most men. It's a day we commemorate our passage into earning a title that is often underrated and degraded. Today is Father's Day. We also have another special guest here today. Many of us grew up, watching You and Your Family. We were entertained, we learned culture, and songs that many of us still sing to ourselves to this day. It's a pleasure for me to introduce our guest, Mr. Ron from the hit TV show Gullah Gullah Island.
Well, hello, everyone.
Welcome, and really, I just want to thank you for connecting with us. And I have to say, it's a great honor to have you. How have you been?
Been well. I've been dealing with the quarantine blues for the past few days, however.
Oh yeah. I'm hoping this pandemic ends soon. I got to get back outside.
Right.
Now, being Father's Day, you've probably gotten a ton of Father's Day gifts. Do you have a favorite, or are they all just ties and socks?
The most favorite Father's Day gift that I have had, usually if my children ask me if I want anything, I tell them to write me something. So if they write me something, that's something I can look at years later, and I just enjoy it. And it's usually very meaningful from the heart.
You still tear up when you read it?
No, I won't say I tear up, but it makes me it's fulfilling. Like, look at what they said. That kind of thing.
Where's the affirmation? I told you all those beatings will pay off.
I know my son, and this is after he had graduated from high school, and he had wanted to fix me a Father's Day meal. So he had the grill, and he did that. He was going through the whole thing, and then I think some friends showed up or something. He was wanting to go with them, so he made sure he finished what he was doing, set the plate before me, but then he was on his way.
But was the food good?
The food was very good.
All right, that's all that matters. That's all that matters.
The real husbands of CofC. We're all graduates from the College of Charleston. We're all married, and the majority of us have kids. We talk about our involvement as husbands and fathers, and share life experiences that shape the choices we make in our roles. I have to admit that we aren't experts, and we don't shy away from wise counsel. With that said, we really just want to pick your brain.
Now, are you saying you're experts in being husbands?
No, we're not.
No. I'm not sure what's being said.
No, we're not experts.
You get that in the video, not the word not. I don't need to see it.
All right.
And
collective, we built so many dog houses in our so
we have actually built dog houses on the show while filming.
Yeah.
But all 5 months and 27 days come crashing down because of this show. So a lot of what I feel is like the pressure to make sure I get it right, because they say someone's always watching you, and with you being a TV dad and a TV husband, and like the ultimate example of what a good person and a good father and husband should be. Did you ever feel that pressure to be the ideal husband and father in public?
Did I feel the pressure to be? I would say yes and no. There is an expectation people generally have, and I'm really a very private person, and when I was in the classroom, and I know some of you are teachers, I dreaded being in the classroom. It was never a career choice of mine, but sometimes people just drive me insane. And what I would generally do to stem the pressure, I would do this. And kids in the classroom, they would begin mocking me because they would see me do this. Or if my voice begins to get loud because I've stated the same thing over and over for the 5th time, they were not expectant of that behavior because they are thinking of Mr. Ron from Gullah Gullah Island who would sing them a nice song. But I don't do that all the time, particularly not when something gets me riled up. But it's good to know who you are and to live the life that you live as opposed to living the life that you think is expected of you.
Being married for over 30 years, you know, and co-starring and working together on a successful TV show, I might add. How did you maintain, you know, the romance? You know, I know you're working together that close. There's some rifts, you know. How did you maintain the romance?
Cardell getting a little spicy for you now.
Right.
That's a very, very good question. And I can't say that during the time I was fully aware of the answer that I'm about to give. But every individual, husbands and wives, partners, need to be aware of their love language and the love language of their wives or their partners. Because lots of times when we are expressing the love language that is meaningful to us, we think that that's the love language that your wife wants to receive. And if you do the survey, you find that whatever your love language is, your partner's is the exact opposite of it. So if your language is words of affirmation and your wife's is receiving gifts, it doesn't matter how many nice words you say, you just try to give them some gifts and the gift that they prefer. And that meets their love language. And that's the best way to go about being romantic. Not in the way that pleases you, but in the way that pleases the one with whom you would like to be romantic. You'd like to romance.
You write that down.
I like how you threw in the gifts they prefer.
Yeah,
correct.
That is key.
That is key. And
Great.
I'm unsure if you are familiar with the love languages. There's a book, The 5 Love Languages. They are words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. And if you love to be physical and your wife lacks acts of service, that's the kind of romance that will really make her feel good and appreciated. So regardless of all the good words you say, it's not gonna make a bit of difference. It's gonna get her upset.
Now, I know someone said that women are like a crock pot, and that the little seeds that you sow throughout the day, the seasonings, is heating it up for later. So, ooh, baby, I took out the trash. Ooh, I cut the grass. I made sure this was taken care of.
I must be seasoning with cayenne. That's all I'm using.
Mira been talking about me putting up this bookshelf and putting up this clock for the longest. And I kept putting it off, and I was like, you know what? It's her love language. Let me go ahead and put that up. And she wasn't expecting it. So she was like, oh my God, I appreciate it so much. And I was like, yeah.
Oh, so romantic.
And it may have been that, I don't know if she knew if you could do it.
Yeah.
That's what she wanted done. And if you had gotten someone else to do it, that itself would have been an act of service. You would have fulfilled the service that you wanted to have received.
Right.
Hey, just make sure it don't fall apart later, Jay.
Oh, no, we good, bro. We good.
And another thing that I've learned for each of us, and if we should feel that our love language, we are not receiving that, you got to be courageous to say that my love tank needs to be filled. Or my love tank is not being filled, because your partner may feel that whatever love language that is most important to her, that her expressing it to you should be what you need, but it isn't. But be comfortable and knowing that your love languages change. They don't stay the same.
That's very true. I know for sure Mira's love language definitely changed after having Journey.
Yep.
So it was interesting just because I think we took that advice from you and Miss Daise. Y'all gave us that advice before we got married anyways, to look at our love language and things like that. So and we have them posted by our bed frame, so we know exactly like whose love language it is and when it changes. And we take the test at least every 6 months just to make sure like nothing's changed. So yeah, so you're absolutely correct. Definitely great advice on that part.
And you'll find that is important also with child rearing, because each child will have his or her own love language. And you may think that just being the wonderful dad that you are is meeting their needs. But if they need words of affirmation and you are not giving them words of affirmation, they will look for it elsewhere.
That's I've never thought about that as far as like the kids having their love language. It's always been more of like, oh, like the adults have that, and then you kind of do what you need to do to keep the kids happy and get them what they need. Because we took the love language test too. We've taken it several times. And after she had Eden, flipped the script on me, man.
Right.
The service went from down here to like, whoo. Like
keeping romance alive while we were in production. And what a number of people may not know, that was a very hectic period in our lives. Our oldest, who was 3 years old, had just, before we had gone to film the pilot down in Orlando, we had just discovered that she had a mortal illness called dermatomyositis, a rare autoimmune deficiency. The autoimmune system began attacking the muscles and the skin. And so that is something that we were dealing with that first year, the first few years of production. Plus, we had a newborn at the time. We were dealing with all that. Just struggling to stay sane was the most important thing, not being romantic, just being present.
Yeah, and then you got the expectations of the studio on top of that too.
Correct.
Being that you've been married for 34 years, 34, right?
Yes.
34 years. Looking back, can you see how things have changed? And the article I was reading was talking about basically how when you first get married, you feel like really connected. Then you have kids and you kind of like get into this weird space. But then usually by the time the last kid is like ready to leave out the house, you kind of get back to how it was at the beginning. Could you speak on any of that?
If you stand the test, you get back to where sometimes your kids could take you out. I received wise advice from an elder friend during the time my son was in his teens. And she said, well, you know, Ron, the thing about kids is that they will change. They'll come around if you let them live. And I'm glad I let him live, because that he has come back around to some sense of sanity. And kids will do that. And, with my wife and me, I had a commuter job. So I was gone 4 days out of the week, leaving home from Beaufort early on Monday morning, driving 3 hours, going through the work week. I would return on Thursday night. And children change a lot during that time. And just the pressure of two parents, jointly but independently, dealing just with that, plus everything else, plus a marriage. You just need to take some time to have some together moments with your spouse. And that is not necessarily solely when you're alone and trying to be intimate in bed. You just have to have time together to talk about anything. Anything besides the kids.
I was gonna say anything besides the kids.
That's right.
Oh man, yeah, that's good, man. Well, actually, staying with the topic of kids, I did have another question for you. So, I'm not sure if you've seen the news the past couple of days, but what happened back in February in Georgia with the mod,
Yes.
and the men they actually were arrested last night, but up until last night, nothing happened. But just with all that, and knowing you have your son, and I have a son, like I told you before, do you have any like advice or words of wisdom on how you chose to prepare your son for the world, being that like everybody out there doesn't love him, like everybody doesn't want to see him?
Right. As Black fathers, we have to be ready, we have to be aware, and we have to begin early to give our sons, particularly, the talk. And there are many who may not understand what that is, but you have to be able to explain, just as you said. There are many individuals who don't see them as the beautiful, the wise, the human beings that they are. But there are times, particularly when dealing with law enforcement officials, and since you pull over, there's a certain way that you must respond. You have to keep your cool, you gotta make sure they are aware of where your hands are, etc. And you can't be shooting off at the mouth. Gotta answer their questions as calmly as possible. It's important to get our sons to realize that there is, to have an awareness of God, and to know that God is within them, and God is within them at times even when things seem difficult or they don't understand. It's important to let our sons and our daughters know how much we love them and care for them, regardless of what other people may say or what other people may think. It is very difficult to get our children to understand, particularly since we are in an integrated society, live in integrated communities, they have integrated, numerous friends of different cultures, but the societal expectations of them are sometimes different than they are from others. You gotta tell them, when such and such happens, this is the best way to handle it. And if that does not work, this is the second best thing to do at that time.
Right. So would you say you had almost like practicing scenarios before it happened, so you'd be prepared if it did happen? Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just to stay on that and kind of expand from that, because that's a really good point. You touched on saying that for them to remember that they have God in them. And I really feel that having that relationship provides a sense of security and self-efficacy, and like knowing who you are no matter what they say you are. Mm-hmm. And that will help dictate how you react to their nervousness or their fear that they're projecting onto you.
Right.
And so you don't have to jump out of character because you have someone that's instilling that sense of love and that sense of identity within you.
Yes, I think it's important for fathers to pray for their children, to pray over their children, and to let their children know that that's what they are doing. It's equally important for husbands to pray for and pray over their wives. It's even in terms of romance, it's important to ask your spouses what they would like you to pray for them for, because you may be thinking it's this issue, but it may not at all. It might be something even more intense that you haven't even thought of. And their awareness that you are more in sync and in agreement with them is very, very important to the relationship.
Based on everything that you stated so far, you know, how we saw you as this awesome TV dad, how I personally know you as basically like another uncle in the family. I have a question that basically goes along the lines of the black male and being a stereotype. So, of course, you know, black males, the stereotype is that we're most of the time deadbeats, rather than those strong leads. Like we all have seen you play a role in your children's lives as well as your wife or your partner's life. My question is, what keeps you motivated to continuously be a father and husband to your family?
What keeps me motivated to continue being, I think I love my wife and I love my family. And even at times when I get upset with something that my wife may do, I have to remind myself, you know, well, who is better for you than this individual who you are upset with at this moment? It is only a moment.
Right.
And you've made a commitment for a lifetime. So honor that commitment. And if you realize or you find yourself tossed and driven by some activity or inactivity of one or all of your children, I find it's good to remind myself, you know, this individual is my gift from God. And as such, a gift from God is a good thing. So wait for the moment until you realize it.
Right.
Again.
Well, forever is a long time.
You just at the beginning of forever, man. You keep saying that. You got a long.
Right. No, man. I know. To piggyback off of James' question, Mr. Ron, or as James might say, Uncle Ronnie. So, how do you feel that your role as father changed once your kids became adults themselves? And like as they began to see you in a new light and you get to see them in a new light?
Well, you have to realize when you're rearing your children that really you're just training them to become adults. And when they near adulthood and reach adulthood, then it's a transitioning period for yourself as well as for your children. You are not there so much to show them the way anymore, but you have to step back that, okay, you can make them aware of different options that they may have, but they're in the driver's seat now. So you've been living for that moment. And depending on how you have maneuvered throughout their childhood, that will be a more friendly relationship with them when they become adults, because they can trust you. You're not going to fire away, you must do things this way. You're going to give them, okay, well, if you've done this, do you want to know how some alternatives? Because they may not want to know. They may just want to tell you about some things that they're going through as an adult. And then perhaps all they most want to know is if you still love them. And, you know, they're your children. They're your gifts from God. Yes, you love them. Even as though they maneuver some places where you may have thought, oh, how did you get there? But once again, it's a period of transition when you're children, and you've been hopefully working toward that, because you don't want your children always to remain childlike. They become adults and they have to make their own decisions.
What do you say to the fathers who are not in their children's lives and like that impact? Because I think, you know, some of us, our fathers weren't in our lives, and as an adult now, I don't feel that, looking back, I feel I needed a father then, but I don't need a father now. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, the relationships changed, perspectives changed. I'm an adult now. I'm 32 years old. Like, I'm not a father figure at this age.
I think fathers who are not in their children's lives should realize what they're missing. And not only what they're missing, what their children are missing. Each child is the result of two individuals. And those two individuals have lives that are complex, that branch off from different connections with their individual families. And your child needs to know about that side of their family tree. They need to know about who you are, who you were as a child. And I'd like to think there are more Black fathers who are strong and loving and connected with their families than there are those who are not involved with the lives of their children. But for those who are not, I think they should at least try to make the connection with their child. They have to try to see if that connection is something the child wants to begin. And if so, in what way would they engage in it? It can't be in a way as if they had been involved in their child's lives throughout their whole, their life. And if they hadn't, they can't walk that back, but they can establish some kind of relationship that could be quite meaningful.
Mr. Ron, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you for stopping by, man. And we're going to bring this to a close. I don't want to take up more of your time. Again, we thank you, and it's been a pleasure.
Okay. Bye now.